Well, hey guys, welcome back to our As a Man Thinketh study. This has been really good, really powerful. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have as well. And today we are in Vision and Ideals. Man, some good stuff in this chapter. I'm looking forward to diving in with you. So real quick, this is our last, for those of you that are going through the live training right here, this is our last kind of recorded one like this. We've got one more chapter, the chapter on serenity, but hey, we're doing something slightly different on the chapter on serenity. So this is the last lesson that we have like this. We also have our last live teaching coming up this week. So for those of you that are going through the live training, look forward to that. For those of you that are joining in on the recording, hey, welcome. I hope you've been enjoying this, and this is really powerful. I hope you won't just boom, skip right through this stuff, like dive in. And anyway, so let's jump right on in. I think we've really dug into some really deep stuff up until this point, and there's some things that you could really labor some. I've tried not to labor some points. I guess you could, but I wanted to kind of keep it as light as possible. But you've also, man, this book is so deep, and the material is just so deep. But you've got to do justice to it, right? And there's just so much power in this book and power in this this particular chapter too. And this is one of my favorites. I love ideas. Our kids, they'll pop up. If they hear the word idea, they'll pop up and say, Daddy loves ideas. And I do, man. I do, right? So let me get a sip of water and we'll jump right on in here. So jumping right on in, when you think about it, so let's take a look at it. Line 6 right there, you see, the dreamers are the saviors of the world. Boom. We could stop right there. We could shut it down right there. The dreamers of the saviors of the world. Of course, when you hear something like that the dreamers of the savior of the world, then that tells you that there's another role, right? That you can play the role of a dreamer, and you can be the savior, or not the dreamer, right? Not the dreamer. And it's kind of like you could either be the person in the water who needs the orange ring kind of tossed to them, or you can be the one on the boat tossing them the ring, right? Which do you want to be, right? You think again, we talk about the use of words here in this book, and that word savior. It's kind of a spiritual word there, right? When you hear that, the dreamers of the saviors, little s, not capital S, dreamers of the saviors of the world. He says that as the visible world is sustained by the invisible, and you think about that, as we look around this room, there are all kind of things that are in this particular room. There's pictures up on the wall there. There's a bookcase kind of over there behind me. There's all kind of things you see that's there, right? And there's a lot of things in the room that you're in, and yet we recognize there's actually more empty space than there is occupied space, right? And that occupied space is the space of potential energy. It is the stuff that Wallace D. Wattles would call the thinking stuff, right? So he's saying here that the visible world is sustained by the invisible. And so men, through all their trials and sins, and are nourished by the beautiful visions of their solitary dreamers. And I think, solitary dreamers is critical there, right? They're solitary dreamers. These aren't just people who are idea people, right? He's talking about their solitary dreamers. He's saying humanity cannot forget its dreamers. And think about it, Martin Luther King Jr., right? Humanity cannot forget its dreamers. It cannot let their ideals fade and die. It lives in them. It knows them as the realities that it shall one day know. Composer, sculptor, painter, poet, prophet, sage, these are all the makers of the afterworld, the architects of heaven, he says. He says, the world is beautiful because they have lived. Without them, laboring, humanity would perish. He says, he who cherishes a beautiful vision, a lofty ideal in his heart will one day realize it. So here he uses the word cherish. And that's going to be kind of recurring theme here. He who cherishes a beautiful vision. So we want to think about the two ideas there. There's first off, what does it mean to cherish something? How do you regard something that you cherish, right? He says Columbus cherished a vision of another world and he discovered it. Copernicus, he says, fostered the vision of a multiplicity of worlds in a wider universe and he built it. He's saying cherish, foster and nurture and be held, right? Cherish, foster, and behold here, cherish, foster, behold our vision. When you think about what your dream is, what your vision is, what your purpose is, the goal that you're working on in your life right now, ask yourself, what's it mean to foster, right? What's it mean to foster? When you take in, if we're going to foster, the image that somebody come to mind is that we're fostering, like a foster parent, is where you take on the responsibility of something. You protect it. You take it on as your own, right? We cherish, we foster, and we behold. He says, cherish your visions, cherish your ideals, cherish the music that stirs in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts. For out of those will grow all delightful conditions and all heavenly environment of those. If you but remain true to them, your world would at last be built. And man, that is so good. This idea of, when you think about how we remain true to somebody, right? You think of a relationship, right? When you're a young guy, we're in the Legacy Builders Men Mastermind group. When you're a young guy and you courting a young lady, a young girl, and you got this young guy, he's trying to date this young girl, he's going to remain true to her, right? In the face of temptation, in the face of challenge, it remains true. Are you remaining true to your vision? Are you remaining true to what it is that you want to create? Do you have a passion for it? Do you have a love for it, right? He says the desire is to obtain, to aspire, to achieve. He says, shall man's basest desires, so should man's basest desires receive the fullest measure of gratification. That means kind of our fear, our anxiety, our worry. Should that receive all of our focus? In other words, think about it. Should we give all of our energy to our fears and our worries and our doubts? Should that receive the full measure of our gratification, all of our effort and energy? Or should it be that our purest aspirations starve for lack of substance, right? He says, that's not the law, right? Such a condition of things can never obtain. Ask and receive. He says, what you want to do is, he says, dream lofty dreams. And as you dream, so you shall become. He doesn't say dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so you shall get, right? He says you become this thing. That is really, that is what we're really looking for here. The purpose of all this is to become the person who could create or manifest what it is that you want in your life, right? He says, your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. And again, he said, he says, get. He says, your ideal is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. When we think about unveiling something, we unveil something that is already there. There's something there, or they're there to unveil, right? We don't unveil nothing. So he's saying your ideal is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. He says the greatest achievement, at first and for a time, is a dream. He says the oak, I love this quote right here, y'all. He says the oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and the highest vision of your soul an awakening angel stirs. He says dreams are the seedlings of reality. So when you think about that, he doesn't say that the dream that you have, the goal, the dream, he doesn't say that it's a seed, right? It's a seedling. And there's a difference between a seed and a seedling, isn't there? A seedling is already rooted. It's already kind of burst through. It's not a sprout, it's not a seed either. It's beyond both of those, isn't it? And can live, a seedling can kind of live on its own. A seedling can be pulled up and replanted, and often is, right? A seed may not germinate where the seedling's already germinated. It's already on its way, right? And producing beyond a sprout, and a seedling can take some weather too, right? Whereas a sprout, it can't. He's saying dreams are the seedlings of reality. He says your circumstances may be uncongenial, but they shall not long remain so if you but perceive an ideal and strive to reach it. He says you cannot travel within and stand still without. That, guys, right there. There's several famous quotes in this book. But this is one of them, right? That right there, what you just heard, is one of the most famous quotes in this book. You cannot travel within and stand still without. Your circumstances may be uncongenial. You could be facing all kind of challenges, he says, but they will not long remain. So if you will but perceive an ideal and strive to reach it. Again, how do you do this? Perceiving of the ideal, the perception of the ideal, the perception of this vision that you want, this ideal that you fall in, that you fall in love with, right? That's an inner game. That's an inner game. So you perceive this inside. He says it's impossible for you to travel within and it not manifest without, and it not, stand still without, right? Then he kind of gives this example of this this hard-pressed young guy, right? Driven by poverty and labor, confined to long hours in an unhealthy workshop. He's unschooled, lacking all the arts of refinement, but he dreams of better things, he says. He says he thinks of intelligence. He thinks of a refinement. He thinks of grace and beauty. He conceives of and mentally builds up the ideal condition in his life. The vision of a wider liberty and a larger scope takes possession of him. And I think that's an interesting part, right? I really do. Is at one point we begin to build our dream, then our dream kind of begins to build us. What happens is there a certain point, right? You hit this tipping point where you begin to vision and really fall in love with your dream, where you can no longer sit still. Right? It moves you into action. There's, I think, when we think of kind of evolving levels that we go through, when we get an idea, and at first we can get really excited. Sounds like a great idea, right? Then we start to reason with it and we think, well, I'm not sure I can do this. And then we think, let me just wait a little bit. Let me just wait for some time. Maybe the time's not right. Maybe I'm not ready for this. But he's saying right here, if we'll conceive of this idea, if we'll kind of fall in love with it, right? If we'll begin to mentally build up this idea, if we'll vision a wider and larger scope, it takes possession of us, right? And begins to urge us to action. And then what we do is we begin to utilize all of our spare time and all of our means. He says, small though they may be, to the development of his latent powers and resources. And very soon, so alters his mind, becomes that workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunities which fit the scope of his exceeding power, he passes out forever. Man, when you think about it, isn't it that what happens is you begin to grow. You think of your friends, we've talked about this, of 20 years ago, right? They're no longer kind of around you anymore, right? It's not that you have had like a falling out or anything. It's just you move apart. You kind of gravitate towards different things. Think of some of the habits that you have as you grow. Those habits change. Think of some of the thoughts that you have. Those things change. Your goals change. Everything changes. Decisions, what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, it changes. Your heroes change. Everything changes, right? Everything changes. And he says, years later, we see that this young youth is now a full-grown man, and we begin, what does he say right here? Full-grown man, and we find him, We find him a master of certain forces of the mind, which he wields with worldwide influence on the most unequal power, right? He says, in his hands, he holds the cords of gigantic responsibility. He speaks, and lo, lives are changed. Men and women hang upon his words and remold their character. They remold their character. What does he say? Character is sunlight. He becomes the fixed luminous center around which innumerable destinies revolve. He's realized the vision of his youth. He's become one with his ideal. And he says, you too, youthful reader, will realize the vision, not the eye to wish, the vision of the heart, but at base or beauty, whether base or beauty or mixed or both, for you will always gravitate towards that which you secretly most love. Wow. Again, this is just a recurring thing, right? He talks about which we harbor, right? which we harbor secretly. And so again, the whole book is about this inner game, our heart of hearts. It's the heart of hearts. He says, into your hands will be placed the exact results of your own thoughts. You will receive that which you earn, no more, no less, right? Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, with your vision, and with your ideal. You will again, here's the word, guys, become as small as your controlling desire and as great as your highest aspiration. Man, I'm just going to read that again. You will again become as small as your controlling desire and as great as your highest aspiration. Man. You know, in the beautiful words of Stanton Kirkman Davis, you may be keeping accounts, and presently you shall walk out the door that for so long has seemed to you the barrier of your ideals and find yourself before an audience. The pen still behind your ear, the ink stains on your fingers, and there you should pour out the torrent of your inspiration. You may be driving sheep and wandering into the city, an open mouth, and you shall wander under the intrepid guidance of the Spirit into the studio of that master. After that time, you've got nothing more to teach. He's got nothing more to teach you, and now you've become the master who did so recently dream of great things while you were driving sheep. He says, you laid down the saw and the plane, and you take upon yourself the regeneration of the world. Man, that's good. He says, so he's talking about this young guy, this young person born in poverty, working hard, pulls himself up by his bootstraps, right? Visions this new life, works really hard, creates this new life, and steps into this whole new achievement, right? Now he grows up and he's now kind of, wielding this responsibility and all this power, and he speaks and lives are changed, and now he is living this full life. How does the world respond, right? Well, he tells us right here on line 706, the thoughtless, the ignorant, and the indolent, seeing only the apparent effect of things and not the things of themselves, talk about luck and fortune and chance. And I think of this, and I think maybe one of the reasons why I love this chapter is because it is kind of part of my story. I grew up raised early in my life by two women, my mom and my grandmother, and we were probably low end middle class, I would say. And I worked hard to kind of get to where I was. And I was talking to a guy just the other day, and he was a guy that I had just met. Automatically the initial conversation goes, well, what do you do? Right? What do you do? And I told him what I do, with working with other leaders and businesses and entrepreneur men. And his response was, wow, that's awesome. You sure are lucky, you sure are lucky that you get to do what you want to do every day, day in and day out. And I know he didn't really think about it and probably didn't even consciously choose the word luck, the word lucky. But I can tell you, the luck, if you will, that I have received has come through much prayer, much work, and much intentional effort. And if he only knew how many times I worked from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. just to get this lucky, right? How many times I got up to be at the gym at 5 for 2 hour long CrossFit classes just to rush back over to the other side of the building to see my first physical therapy patient at 8. See physical therapy patients all the way during the day, sometimes through lunch until 5 p.m. and then rush back over to the CrossFit side until 8 p.m. All the while trying to do marketing and billing and all that stuff. That ain't luck, no luck at all. It was a lot of work. But they don't know what I went through, right? They just think, they see the effect of things and think, how lucky you are. Observing another become intellectually, how favored he is, the book says. In the book, James Allen says, nothing. Noting the saintly character of wider influence, another will remark, how chance aids them in every turn. They do not see the trials and the failures and the struggles which these men have voluntarily entered in order to gain their experience. They have no knowledge of the sacrifices they've made, of the undaunted efforts that they've put forth in the faith that they've exercised. And I think there's something you might want to look at. He's talking here. What is it? It's sacrifice, right? Undaunted effort, faith that they've exercised to overcome the apparently insurmountable to realize the vision of their heart. They do not know the darkness and the headaches. They only see the light and the joy and call it luck. They don't see the long and arduous journey, but only behold the pleasant goal and call it fortune, good fortune. They do not understand the process, but only perceive the result and call it chance. And here I just, ooh, guys, ooh, this is good right here. I love this right here. In all human affairs, there are efforts and there are results. And the strength of the effort, y'all, is the measure of the result. Chance is not. Gifts, powers, material, intellectual, spiritual possessions are the fruits of effort. They are the thoughts completed, objects accomplished, visions realized. Then, of course, our closing statement, the vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you've thrown in your heart, this you will build your life by, and this you will become. Guys, I think this chapter is really the expression of the application of the rest of the entire book. In other words, if you were to take thought and character and you look at the story he has of the young laborer and the character that it takes to stay laboring and to stay focused and the character to show up and to work and maybe unfair conditions, but to stay focused on his dream. Then we look at the effect of thought and circumstance and the effect on the body, and we look at the effect of thought and achievement and all that we've looked at and the levels of character. Then this chapter right here, this chapter, what does all that look like? All that look like that we've talked about. What does all that look like manifest? What does all that look like completed, right? He says, when you do the first half of this book, you then become the dreamer. You then become the savior of the world. You become a model for other people, right? You become one of these solitary dreamers. And he talks about, I think in this chapter is what a person's life looks like having lived out the first 5 chapters of the book, right? That's really what this chapter is all about, is vision and ideals. And then, of course, the vision that you glorify in your mind, right? And you have to glorify it in your mind. I think you have to have that ideal right there enthroned on your heart, right? If you're going to build your life by it, if you're going to pay the price that's necessary, I don't know what's required of you, right? Your life wants all of you. Your dream wants every bit of your creativity. It wants all of your money. It wants all of your time. Your dream is going to be selfish, and there's a great reward for it. Guys, there is a great reward for it. And it's not just getting what you want, is it? It's becoming that type of person. And I want to go back to this real quick. So I remember talking to Nicholas, and he was thinking about joining us as a legacy builder. And he asked me, if I were him, would I join Legacy Builder? And I told him, that decision was, I'm probably not the best person to ask that. Not because I'm, I created it or anything like that. But I know what my vision is. And I know something like Legacy Builders, personal growth and development, books, courses, seminars, webinars, all that stuff. They are in alignment with it. And I know I am so bought in. I'm bought in. I know my dream wants every bit of my creativity. It wants all of my money. It wants all of my time, right? It's selfish. It's going to be selfish. And I'm all in, right? I am all in. So it's an easy yes. But I don't think you can get to that point unless you have a clear vision of where you want to go. The decision becomes tough then. And it's once you make that decision of what your vision is, you can make those kind of things an easy yes or an easy no. All right, so let's jump back in. It's really becoming the type of person, isn't it? It's becoming that. It's becoming the person who can make it happen. It's becoming the person who, when there are rough patches and challenges and other circumstances that most people kind of just fall apart, because you've become that type of person. You've walked it out. You've gained experience. Experience leads to mastery. And he says here in the chapter on serenity, which I think ties in, really cool here. He says, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. He said it is the result of long and patient effort and self-control. Its presence is an indication of ripened experience and of a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws and operations of thought. I think when you think about the first 5 chapters of this book and you really study it and you really apply it in your life and you walk it in your life for a period of time, and the way I think you walk this book in your life is through thinking, through exploring, through discovery, through self-inventory, through paying attention to what you're paying attention to, through taking the time to go through and answer these questions that I've asked you to consider, right? To really think. Most people don't really think. And I think if you'll do the first 5 chapters of this book, I think then the 6th chapter of vision and ideas become the promised answer, right? Just becomes the result of it. It's a very natural result of thinking this way, right? And I think what he's done in this book up until now is he's challenged us to be a thinker, to really be a thinker. And now in this chapter, he's saying, okay, now that you've become a thinker, now that you've made this agreement that you are the maker of yourself, now he's saying, put some legs underneath it, right? Now build a vision. Now build a vision. Now cherish it. Now nurture it. Now foster it. And dedicate your life to it and commit your life to it. Tune into it and feel it and experience and come from it. So, just, man, great chapter. And just one last piece. He says right here, in all human affairs, there are efforts and there are results. And the strength of the effort is the measurement of the result. It's from that sentence where I came up with this idea, and I got this idea of not being attached to the outcome, right? But being attached to your participation in the outcome. What can I do? Am I doing all that I really can? And if I'm doing all that I really can do, and if I'm giving it my very best, then I'm going to bed at night and I'm going to feel good, right? I'm going to sleep good. So you're responsible for the effort, not the result. Do your best, and part of it, is out of your hands. It's out of your control, part of it, but the effort isn't. The effort is in your hands. And what's also in my hand is my ability to allow God to do his work through me and to be a vehicle that he can use during this small lifespan that he's given me and to stay communicating right there. So, man, just such a powerful book, powerful chapter. And guys, I hope this has added value to you. I really do. And I hope you're enjoying this. If this has been a great study, I've got this recorded, and I just think more and more people need to hear some of this stuff. Feel free to share it. I'd love to get more people in the study. They can go through it at their own pace. I've recorded all these, so it's going to stay up for you to view at all times. But if you got a friend or family member you think would benefit from this, share it with them. It's only $49, right? I don't know about you, but I've paid much more for some trainings than that, and I think this is so deep, and I think that's a steal. So anyway, guys, I hope y'all have a great day, and God bless.